Hello and welcome to our viewers here in Nigeria and of course all around the world. This is Firecrackers, where we discuss issues of national interest. We also get to engage the major players. I am Kelly Egiga. Tonight on the program we will take a look at the UK proposed sanctions on some Nigerian government officials. We will also take a look at the FG and ASUU agreement. It does appear we finally have an agreement after over 8 months of the union being on strike. Plus, on the program, we'll also take a look at security, which is a major and worrisome issue. That there have been reports of kidnappings in several parts of the nations. Well, the latest is that on Saturday, there was a very, very severe attack by the Boko Haram insurgents in Borno State, where almost 60 soldiers were attacked, according to report. And of course, finally on the show, we'll also take a look at Nigerian land borders, which has been shut for more than 13 months now. And 13 months after, what is the story of our land borders and what economic impact can we say the shutting of the borders caused in the course of the shutdown? This is Firecrackers. Let's go take a look at that debate in the UK by some lawmakers pressing for sanctions on some Nigerian government officials. Welcome to the show.
In July of this year, the Secretary of State for Foreign, Commonwealth and Developmental Affairs introduced the Global Human Rights Sanctions Regulations. Under this statutory framework, priority themes relate to cases that threaten media freedom and human rights defenders. Furthermore, another priority theme considers cases where the relevant jurisdiction law enforcement authorities have been unable or unwilling to hold those responsible for human rights violations or abuses to account. The government clearly have the tools to ensure that Nigerian state officials respect the constitutional and fundamental human rights to protest and free speech. If those who ordered and facilitated the killings and harm to protesters are not held accountable, then the UK government should advocate for independent investigations to take place. And following investigations, any individuals found responsible for these atrocities of human dignity must face sanctions.
So, Minister, I don't think that words from the government today are going to be enough, because I think we've got to show our solidarity, demonstrate it by identifying and targeting those that we know are responsible for terrible violence and abuses that the activists have faced. The least we should do is to make sure that those who have murdered Nigerians and deprived them of their human rights aren't able to benefit from trade or travel to the UK. In my view, that should include the leaders of the government and the military who are even now, refusing to allow transparent and fair investigations to happen and for justice to be implemented. What I want to hear from the Minister today is that a list of Magnitsky, I never say that word properly, sanctions is being created and action against those on that list taken in weeks and not years. Our role in this must be, I think, to work with all that we can to identify those responsible and ensure justice is done.
Mr. Chairman, if a democratic country deprives its people of their aspiration, livelihoods and voices, strips its people from their loved ones, forces them into hiding and instills fear of retribution through violent attack on free speech, then that country can only be a dictatorship disguised as a democracy. Is Nigeria a dictatorship?
That there is a seemingly agreement between the two of them, because that means our children will now go back to school. They will now have a positive things to exert their energy on. All right? But I have to warn ASUU that they should be careful again. Because we have seen instances whereby agreement like this will be reached. At the end of the day, the federal government will still breach it. So this agreement has to be properly solidified, entrenched, and conceptualized in terms of coming up with action plans. Because in the past, there hasn't been any action plans.
I am of the opinion that if government wants to be sincere about everything, let there be a good autonomy for the universities and the polytechnic, managing them in a standard manner, and where there is lacuna, government can quickly intervene, wedge the hammer. Government can wedge hammer. They should be on the part of wedging the hammer, allow them to function sustainably. So I think that's my submission on that.
Well, thank you for staying with us. This is Firecrackers. Let's cross over live to Texas in the U.S., where I have my guest standing by to speak with us. She's a foreign affairs analyst. Somto Chukwu Ike joins us live from Texas. Somto, thank you so much for agreeing to speak with Galaxy TV. Let's begin from the U.S., where you are at the moment. It appears President Donald Trump has suffered another legal blow as one of the Supreme Court threw out a suit from some U.S. Republicans. Where you are, what exactly is playing out there?
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for having me. As of last night, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania threw out a court case that the Republicans brought up, saying that they wanted to toss up mail-in ballots. In the state of Pennsylvania, mail-in ballots are legal. So that's the thing about the United States. Each state has its law pertaining to the election, and in Pennsylvania, mail-in ballots are legal. They have different dates and timelines. There was a time where they were going back and forth, whether you submit your ballot later or the day before. So it depends. But honestly, there is not much the Trump lawyers and the GOP can do at this point, because it's been tossed up by the state Supreme Court, and the federal government doesn't have any influence in state law. They can use federal law, that's in the independent states. So if the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court has said no, and that's it.
There are a number of other issues we need to engage your views and your thoughts on, but let's stay in the U.S. for a moment, as Mr. Trump also eventually took questions from journalists finally at the Thanksgiving press briefing, though he's yet to concede, but he has been quoted as saying he won the elections. I mean, he's insisted that he never lost the elections. He's also been quoted as saying that it appears, quote, dead people voted. The president also said it's like we are in a third world country. What do you make of Trump and his shenanigans?
Okay, so I'm going to be honest with you. The issue with Russia was kind of like, it was a little annoying on the side of Trump. So this is just a show just to get back at the Democrats that happened with the Russia situation. We all know the numbers don't lie. Showed up for Joe Biden. There is a difference. 7 million people, almost 7 million people voted more for Joe Biden. People voted more for Joe Biden than they voted for Obama. So the people have spoken. There, you can take away that, you know. Yes, Donald Trump keeps tweeting about that, and I'm happy that my friends at Twitter keep liking that, because that's false information. You know, the math does not lie. Elections are math. Elections are statistics. The math does not lie. People came out with shows despite a global pandemic to vote. They wanted their voices to be heard. So yeah, Trump is a showman. You know, he wants to keep the show going. In terms of conceding, yes, I don't think he will. This is just my analysis. I don't think he will concede bluntly, but he will let the transition come.
Let's cross over to the UK, where some lawmakers earlier in the week had a debate about possible sanctions on some government officials here in Nigeria. A step in the right direction, you think?
Yes, so I think this is good. I don't want to say it's good publicity for the people, but it's good. It's their moral obligation to get the vote, right? Because they did train some parts of the sect or some sects of SAN. They trained some police forces, some military forces. So yes, it is their moral obligation to intervene, right? In terms of who they're sanctioning, then has the investigation. You cannot sanction someone who did not do it, but you have to also know the actions have consequences. And those that did something wrong have to be penalized. So yes, I am only supporter of the individual, not the country. Some economic sanctions have issues. It brings issues and problems to the economy. The country was already in a recession, so economic sanctions on the country would be an issue. So I think it's better they do it to individuals.
I mean, you acquired 3 degrees in 6 years in economics, in political science, and public affairs administration. You need to wade into the education sector here in Nigeria for a moment, because ASU has been on strike for almost 9 months now. Moving forward, how can we improve this particular sector in the country?
So thank you so much for asking that. I believe that the best way to give autonomy to the education system. So education policy is very complicated. People, various schools of thought that say we should have a full overhaul. We should bring comprehensive evaluation. But we've lost our money. So I think it's best to go forward with the agreement they had. They agreed. You brought up a number. It came down to 70 billion. I think that's a good point. There has to be steps taken to make sure that they had to do. But then again, I completely understand the situation going on. For 8 months, it's a long time. We are not in education. You teach because you want to be rich. You teach because you love it. You teach because you want society, to be, to benefit from it. Right? So yes, I understand that need to be paid. That's amazing. They do need to be paid. Both our parents and teachers here in the I understand that. There has to be some kind of and I'm glad that they called up the strike, and I'm glad that they're good, because I've been following the discussion, and it was very interesting to watch and interesting to analyze.
And we have to let you go, but just one more question. You are an economist.
No
Nigeria plunged into her second recession in 5 years. It's the second, and here's the worst in over 3 decades, over 33 years.
Yeah.
Moving forward, what does this mean actually to the average Nigerian?
To the average Nigerian, food prices are going to go up. It means to store your car, you're going to pay more. There are solutions to this. An invisible hand coming in. There's a global pandemic, and it's what's right. And you were talking earlier about, yes, we have to open the businesses, but safely and effectively, right? Because we are a global economy. We have to open the economy back up, go back to, process of supply and demand, do what they need to do to get it. And also, this is spending season, right? People spend a lot of money. So there's a flow of funds coming in. You have to get to December, you have for Christmas, weddings, marriages, New Year celebrations. So the money coming in. The situation at hand is to solve different interventions, allow accessibility for people to invest more, allow for everybody to come into the nation. Different solutions. There are solutions to this issue.
We'd like to thank you so much for agreeing to speak with Galaxy TV Foreign Affairs Analysts. I mean, you have such a huge bio, economist, political scientist, public administration. I mean, there's so much about you. Thank you so much for agreeing to speak with us.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me.
So we'll be speaking with the Foreign Affairs Analyst, Somtochukwu Ike Jofo from Texas in the US. This is Firecrackers. My next guest is an activist. He's also the spokesman of the social cultural group Afenifere Yinka Odumake. He's been very, very vocal and critical of this country called Nigeria. But back in a moment. Stay with us.
Because we are soon starting the process of building this party bottom up. We are starting with the membership registration across the country, and will culminate at the National Convention to elect our new leaders who will take over the chief of affairs of this party. Distinguished Senator, you will never regret doing anything. Sure, your timid supporters back home. They will also never regret doing and like I said, many more are joining because we have a leader of the party, President Muhammad Buhari, who just
our brother took the right decision by joining APC today, and we want to assure you, even though I will leave that much to the chairman, but in the Senate, you are like you are born in APC. Accident that happened to create what today is ruling Adamawa will have to be addressed. By the grace of God, by 2023, Adamawa should belong to the rightful place it deserves. Adamawa State, APC, people in Adamawa, majority of them are APC, and therefore Adamawa State deserves an APC governor, APC National Assembly, and all the local government areas.
Nigeria on Saturday officially announced slipping back into recession for the second time in 5 years. This news did not come as a shock to some experts who had over time decried the alarming rate of increased debt, high cost of governance, extravagant life of political office holders, medical tourism, and of course over-dependency on oil. All these facilitated a retrogressive economy with high capital expenditure and low revenue year in, year out. On the other hand, recently, Nigerians got a lot fallback with the price of fuel taking a shoot up to 170 naira per litre following announcement by the petroleum pricing company. This also spiraled into a hike in price of commodities. Oil, which is Nigeria's major source of revenue, has become moribund over the years following the ineffectiveness of its refineries. Coupled with the nature of borrowing, Nigeria, a country blessed with rich natural resources, has also been tagged as a country largely dependent on importation. In its latest series, Nigeria signed a memorandum of understanding with the Niger Republic to import fuel. This, according to experts, has contributed in no small way to Nigeria's sliding dip into another recession.
The things that has caused us to go into recession have a bearing on the fact that we import everything. We import everything, you know, and the list of which obviously is not petroleum products. We import our petrol, diesel, kerosene, you know, and we're spending hard currency, which we don't have on that importations.
Nigeria has, as a whole, has capacity to produce about 450 barrels per day in volume refineries.
Thanks very much for your company. This is Firecrackers. We always get to discuss issues of national interest. I am Kelly Giga. Joining me at the table to discuss Nigeria is an activist and the spokesman of the social cultural group Afenifere, Mr. Yinka Odumakin. Thank you so much for coming tonight. You have been very vocal about this country, Nigeria, for many, many years. As I remember, you have also been very, very critical of this country. I'm just wondering, what is the state of Nigeria at the moment?
Thank you so much. I've not been critical of the country.
Okay.
I've been critical of the leadership of the country.
Okay.
Because we have not shown that they have a slight understanding of how to run a country like Nigeria. They have been running the country aground. People are suffering. Today we are the global secretariat of poverty. Our young people, most of them have nothing to do. We have nothing to offer them. And you saw what happened during the NSAS protests. I shudder that our leaders can go to bed and sleep comfortably and wake up in the morning to think that we're in this kind of situation. Look at the security situation today. Look at the number of people that are killed in Borno State. She's talking about now. The number is so staggering. So in one day,
about 60 farmers.
More than that, from what I had now, latest. Just 2 days ago, a first-class monarch, you know, the Olufon, was killed on the street like a fowl.
Okay.
And all we are hearing from our president every time is lamentation, which I've made it to say, instead of a commander-in-chief now, we have a lamenter-in-chief. So, what can I be critical of leadership of such a country?
Yeah, but if you point at leadership of this country, I'm not sure it began with this present administration. I mean, I think it's been there for a while now. But let's even talk about the fact that some people think that you were and some other persons were more critical about the past or previous administration, that's the Jonathan administration. Has activists, have there been silenced some sort?
Well, clearly, you know that who are the one that organized the Occupy Nigeria, the 5 days that shook Nigeria, that almost brought the Jonathan government down. But this regime came to power on a crest wave of populism, and the way fascist movements come to power around countries of the world. And most of the voices that were very critical in the land before were part of the move for change in 2015. And when the government came to power, they had high expectations. So that naturally, for many of them, it would be like an anti-party activities to raise their voices against things that are going wrong. And that's why you saw that there were kind of a weakness in many of them. But nature of us vacuum, even when many of the people could not find their voices, the answers we just finished now was led by people you don't even know them. You don't even know them. They don't have names. So you can't recognize them.
But some were arrested. Accounts were frozen.
Okay.
Travel ban issued.
Clearly, because this government does not know what to do. They don't understand the sum of the system. All those fascist measures, freezing accounts, stopping people from traveling, and the rest of them is not solving the problem. In fact, you are telling the guys to be more careful next time. And I've had the president say, I will not allow this one. And the IG of police was saying, yeah, I will not allow another crisis. Who are you to say you cannot allow? It's not you. What they should be doing now is to look for how to ensure that this does not happen again, putting in measures in place. But they are reigning and they are ruling. And for them, it's more about our power. They think that as if the power belongs to them, it belongs to them, not to the Nigerian people. To think that, instead of saying that, there was something that caused this one. Or they think that, it was sponsored, they want the regime change, and the rest of them. Which shows clearly a clear lack of understanding of what happened. And if we don't understand what happened, you cannot deal with it or put measures in place to stop it from happening next time.
How about the demands of actually the NSAS protesters? On the part of the government, they say they have met some of those demands, or some are in the pipeline, but for those who are part of the movement, it's a different story.
Which one did they meet?
The reforms.
Which reforms? You say you are designing SARS. You are putting in place, what do you call that, the new one? SWAT. Is that how you do it? Overnight. If you are doing SWAT, if you are going to replace SARS, have you looked at the complaints against us? Look at these papers. Weeks after SARS, SARS, you can still be bearing testimonies of people. My SARS took 400,000 from me. After that, they killed my son. They are all kind of woeful and dreadful testimonies are still coming about SARS. You've not found out what happened. There are no conversation overnight. Like the way they are. You just announce SWAT. Is that how to run the society? No.
All right. Let's talk about other things, because the Afenifere as a group has also made some demands for a while now.
Yeah.
What are those demands? I know one of them has to do with restructuring and true federalism.
Clearly, the major demand is the need for Nigeria for restructuring. When we say restructuring, some people say, we don't understand what restructuring means. But that's tricky, because for some of our friends on the north who say we don't understand restructuring. Restructuring is nothing but let's go back to federalism. These were people who was asked for confederalism in 1953. After Nehru moved the motion for independence on behalf of Action Group, and they arrived in the north, they killed people. They walked out of the national parliament. Before they came back, they gave an 8-point demand. Those 8-point demands is essentially they asked for a confederal Nigeria, saying that every region should run like separate regions. But from the moment, as I said, we've not found oil. Now that we have found oil, Nigeria became indissoluble, indivisible, and that kind of thing. And now they said, let's go to federalism. We negotiated the federal constitution and independence. Nigeria was a federal republic of Nigeria. The 1963 constitution was a federal constitution. The items on the exclusive list are numbered as 1618. Today we have 68 items on the exclusive list. If you want to restructure Nigeria today, reduce those 68 items to what they were in 1963. Let's have a learning center. But we don't know what they're talking about. We don't understand the restructuring. That's arrogance, clear arrogance and deception. For those who ask for confederation, they don't say they don't know what federalism means.
In terms of the fight for restructuring and true federalism, what's the body language from the presidency?
No, they want to keep Nigeria as it is. For them, this is the best country they can have. For some of them, the idea is that the best country they can have is just sitting on the necks of others and be shouting indivisible Nigeria, indissoluble, and the rest of them. But once they don't have their way, they're going to say, Araba, let's divide Nigeria. for them, for as long as they are borrowing money around the world, because like I will tell you, they use governance to just borrow money and spending it. In 2014, the president made a categorical statement that was going to call that the cost of governance. Only is doubtful whether he has used 10 naira from the cost of governance in Nigeria since he came to power. They are going around the world, anywhere they can see money, borrowing money. We have seen 5 budgets. What have we done with the money? Just borrowing. That in the countries, we have now we've entered the second recession in 5 years, the worst in 30 years. Because the country on autopilot.
Yeah, but it appears, I mean, not only Nigeria, I mean, even the best of economies in the world have also started into recession. So I'm not sure it's a Nigeria thing. That's just my point, because the COVID-19 pandemic had its toll and impact on economies around the world. But
no, my brother, you see, it's a nice way of addressing it when you say recession. What Nigeria is facing for now is that it's going beyond recession. Nigeria is broke. You saw Gigi on TV a few days ago when was trying to castigate that suit. It was reading it out. Maybe he didn't even know what he was saying. So agency, they've not considered their total salary. They've not considered September salary. This and this of them. He was just saying it just to blackmail us.
So you think Nigeria is broke?
Because it's broke. So when you say recession, it's a nice way of saying it. To sound very good.
Well, you can stay with us. We'll come back as we get to build on that. I mean, declaring that Nigeria, a country as this, is broke with all of the natural deposits in the country. I mean, that statement needs a lot of clarification. Stay with us. We'll be right back. But when we come back, someone would join us from Enugu, Ambrose Igboke, to shed light on some of these very pressing issues as we consider the state of the nation. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Nigeria on Saturday officially announced slipping back into recession for the second time in 5 years. This news did not come as a shock to some experts who had over time decried the alarming rate of increased debt, high cost of governance, extravagant life of political office holders, medical tourism, and of course over-dependency on oil. All these facilitated a retrogressive economy with high capital expenditure and low revenue year in, year out. On the other hand, recently, Nigerians got a lot fallback with the price of fuel taking a shoot up to 170 naira per litre following announcement by the petroleum pricing company. This also spiraled into a hike in price of commodities. Oil, which is Nigeria's major source of revenue, has become moribund over the
Well, thanks for staying with us wherever you're watching from around the world. We are live from our studios here in Lagos, Nigeria. I am Kelly Giga. We consider the state of the nation, and my guest, an activist, is also the spokesman of the social cultural group, Afenifere, and he has actually just made a very controversial statement. He has declared that Nigeria is broke. We do not know how true, but let's cross over live to Enugu, where Ambrose Igboke is standing by to speak with us from Enugu, the coal city. Ambrose, thank you so much for speaking with us tonight. The spokesman of Afenifere says that Nigeria is broke. Is that a view you share?
Well, when you say someone is broke, what is the actual meaning of someone is broke? Well, from my own little elementary economics, when you are broke, it means you don't even have profits. Then, when you are sliding into recession, it means you have deficits. So it's a different thing to not even have profits. You can still be afloat. But when you are going to recession, it means by accommodating deficit in Nigeria. It's normal. We have been doing that. But this time around, we have slid down below the ladder. Because what has happened over the last 5 to 6 years is that there have been inconsistent economic policies. In fact, we don't even have a homegrown economic policy that we can lay our hands on and say, this is it. We remember during the Obasanjo era, 1999 to 2007, we have the NEEDS, the National Economic Power Strategy, Development Strategy, which states developed their own called seats. Jonathan had a semblance of also economic policy. But when he came here, we started having RPG and all kinds of scattered economic policies. Then we woke up one day, sometime in August last year, in the midst of all our economic woes, we set up, we woke up, we closed our borders unilaterally without the consent of our neighboring countries whom we signed a trade deal with in the name of ECOWAS. That further, destroyed the little economic progress we've made in the last 4 years. So what are the consequences of just waking up one day and closing your border? And mind you, this border is not just land border for the sake of land border. Many of our sea imports through the ports, through the seaports, come from the Cotonou, come from Togo, and come from Cote d'Ivoire. That corridor, West Africa corridor. We just woke up one day and closed it off. I don't know what kind of economics explain that kind of decision. Then when you come to, then they started celebrating negligible successes. You said that the farmers, especially rice farmers, are smiling to the bank. Then what is, when you look at it, what is the economic comparative analysis of a small section of the country smiling to the bank and the rest of the citizens are paying more for it? Before the ban, before the closure of the border, a bag of rice was selling between 80,000 naira to 22,000 naira, depending on the brand and where you are buying it from. Then all of a sudden, it's converted into an abominable price regime. And then we say we are making progress. How can you be making progress when your prices of goods have become inflammatory and inflation has increased? And then the naira has kept falling. The same people who closed the border are signing agreements with Niger Republic to import fuel through the land borders again. When you check all this, you start wondering if we are not practicing what I call true economics. Because that is the only way. It's magical. There's no systemic approach. There's no what you call strategic logic to plans, economic plans in this country. So we keep floating like the Oxfams and Oxfam of society. We have no vision. We have no direction. It seems we are the economy by impulse. And when you do that, then we won't go far.
Well, Ambrose, let's stray away from the economy for a moment and talk about the issue of the FGR impasse. It does appear that we finally have an agreement. Are you optimistic about this? I mean, because several agreements have always been signed, MOUs and all of that.
Okay, you're talking about the agreement with us. Are you talking about the FG agreement with us? Well, if you are talking about the FG,
you can hear me loud and clear. I said it does appear we finally have an agreement between the federal government and ASU. Are you optimistic about this? Because in the past, several agreements have been signed and MOUs and all of that. Can the federal government be trusted?
No, the federal government cannot be trusted. we have been on this same cycle since more than 25 years. So it is a characteristic of the government not to honor its agreements with unions, especially ASU. I mean, in 2009, there was a groundbreaking agreement with the federal government that would have put to page all these incessant strikes by ASU. And then the government woke up one day and said, we didn't make the agreement with you. As if the Nigerian government is not a continuum. So this issue of it was not in our regime that you made that government doesn't hold water. So government is a continuum, and any agreement that has been reached with the previous administration must be honored by current administration. Because if the current administration is also dependent on past policies of government to earn revenue and to consolidate its power, then it's at the same breath also honor all the agreements, whether it favors it or not. Now, also in the past, since that 2009, has been having these issues, current issues. If ASU calls off this strike based on promises and not implementation, then I won't be surprised if they go another strike, because that has been the pattern. So a government that is going through economic recession, does it have capacity to actually pay up? So that is the dilemma we are having here. So ASU should insist that the federal government should use that money. They're not asking for so much fund. If you think of how much that's budgeted for ASU cleaning, ASU rock cleaning, for example, how much that is budgeted for the National Assembly, how much that is budgeted for less impactful parastatals and agencies, then it hopes the federal government to actually prioritize education and monitor the progress of disbursement and ensure that education is properly funded, especially tertiary education in this country. If we don't do that, then we are just
so much for speaking with us tonight. We are indeed pressed for time, so we have to let you go. But thank you so much for speaking with Galaxy TV, public affairs analyst from Enugu, the coal city, Ambrose Igboke, live for us. There you're watching Firecrackers. Let's come back now and continue with my guests here in the studio, activist and Afenifere spokesman, Yinka Odumaki, as we begin to wind down on our conversation. Yinka, maybe for a moment you probably want to wade in on this issue of the federal government and ASU before we get back and continue with politics.
Well, I think that it shows the states of the country. Any country that will allow its universities to be on strike for this long, almost a year.
Almost 9 months.
9 months now. Cannot be a serious country. I read a report about last week or 2 weeks ago that in the course of this strike, was it Ethiopia had come to Nigeria to recruit about 200 professors. And it shows clearly that education is not a priority for us. And we are clearly doing what will make Boko Haram happy. When you don't put premium on education, what are the demands? What kind of government do we have that in a whole 9 months you cannot resolve your issues with your teachers to go back to the universities? Your children are roaming about the streets for the past 9 months.
But I mean, but remember we had the COVID-19 pandemic for a moment, and earlier in the year,
even if there was no COVID, would they have done anything? COVID, it makes no difference. It's just clearly that government was not alive to the responsibility, and education was not on the priority. Most of those in government, their children are not schooling in Nigeria; they are schooling abroad. I mean, we will start from Mr. President. Mr. President, his daughters, somewhere they graduated from abroad, not here.
But is it a crime? I mean, I know some persons have been calling that public office holders, I mean, their children should be made to school or compelled, as it were, to school in the country. But it's not a crime. I mean,
nobody says it's a crime. But for as long as they have options for their own children, they will not give priority to the children of others. Once their own children are not using the schools. I had a friend in America who went to Ghana some years back, 2007, and went to meet Jerry Rawlings. He had these 8 test kits. In a minute, you cannot do the successors. And he went to Rawlings. And Rawlings should help me introduce that kit to the Ghanaian government. And Rawlings said he would do it. But his first condition was that all members of his families should be tested with that kit. He wants to see results. After they were tested and it was fine and good, Rawlings agreed to take down my friend to the Ghanaian government and introduce him to the Ghanaian government. And that was it. When my friend finished on Ghana, he came to Nigeria to introduce the same thing. He met some top Nigerian government officials. The first thing they asked me was, they didn't ask me for it to be tested. All they asked for, how much is it? Or told them the price. We said, okay, we increase the price 5 times of what you are calling it. And we are an account where you make deposits. That's Nigeria. So it's not about service to people, it's not about delivery. It's not about, so at this time, like I said, if you allow that aspect to continue that way, it means that education means nothing to us.
All right. For a moment, before we begin to look at how we can probably begin to fix things. Yeah. Why is there so much tension, agitation, and demonstrations from all parts of the country at the moment? I mean, in the Niger Delta region, there are reports of militants gearing up and making threats. In the southwest, there have been tensions. In the northern part of the country, it does appear too that there's some level of agitations. Why is there so much of these agitations?
In 1966, Chief Obafemi was in Calabar prison when he wrote Thoughts on the Nigerian Constitution. On page 47 of that book, Awo said, any attempts to run Nigeria along unity lines shall be productive of disharmony, discontent, disagreements, and the rest of them. Everything Awo said, I want you have to read. He said, except you get superhumans to run the affairs of Nigeria. We don't have normal humans to run it, not talk of superhumans. So it's a dysfunctional structure. Every problem you see today at the periphery in Nigeria, they have their vertical link with the wrong structure that we are running. You cannot run the country Nigeria along unity line and expect harmony. Nigeria should be a federal state. The best years of governance in this country was when we had federalism. You know, where many people do not know that in this country there was a time in the first when the Saudi royal family were coming to UCH in Ibadan for medical treatments. Saudi royal family. In 2010, we had
Saudi Arabia?
The royal family, not ordinary Saudis. The royal family, they are coming to UCH in Ibadan for medical treatments. If you go to UCH today, if you are not injected in the eyes, God saves you. We now had a president that almost probably died in Saudi Arabia, or before they brought him home to go and die. Everything is upside down because we have taken the wrong approach to governance. Run Nigeria for Abuja. Look at the EndSARS focus we just came out of. Some of our friends in the north were jubilating, shouting, oh, without northern youth, they didn't join EndSARS focus. It was lack of understanding of what happened. Why was EndSARS more?
But there were few protests in the north.
There were some few, but why was more pronounced in the south? Because when you look at Nigeria architecture, okay, we say that we want to recruit police. 10 police, you see, per local government. Kano, we have 44 government, we have 440 men. Bayelsa, we have 80 policemen because they have eight local governments. It's one of those men that will recruit SARS. That means that a culture dominates other cultures.
Because we're pressed for time.
Yes.
Maybe my final question will be, can Nigeria be fixed? If it can be fixed, how?
Nigeria can be fixed if you go back to federalism. If you don't go back to federalism, if we continue on this trajectory of running Nigeria from Abuja, and we are shouting indissoluble, indivisible, in the rest of the acronym, we should go and ask where Soviet Union is, where Yugoslavia is, where some of those countries that are no longer on the world map, where are they today? The only way to fix Nigeria, to bring it back, is to go back to federalism, and which are we calling for? Which we call it restructuring. There's something, restructuring does not mean anything. Let us reset. Let's go back to federalism. Yes.
Yinka Dumakin, I'd like to thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. We'll be speaking with a spokesman of the social cultural group, Afenifere, Yinka Dumakin. He's also an activist. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
My pleasure. Well done.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's about the size of our package. We'd like to thank you for being on the other side of the show. I am Kelly Egiga. The show returns next week, Sunday. Join us again, 4:30 p.m. Bye for now.